There is a kind of mother whose love feels endless, the one who is always giving, always there, always holding the pieces when everyone else breaks. To the outside world, she looks like the purest form of devotion. But inside, beneath that constant giving, there is often a quiet ache. Because giving too much isn't just love. Sometimes it's a form of self-erasure. Sometimes it's the only way she knows how to feel worthy. If this feels familiar, stay with me. The pattern begins long before motherhood. Often, in her own childhood, love was something earned, not given. Approval was conditional. Good grades, good manners, no trouble. She learned early that affection had a currency, and that currency was usefulness. To be loved, she had to be needed. So she grew up measuring her worth by what she could provide: comfort, help, peace. Her sense of self formed around other people's needs. By the time she became a mother, that training had turned into instinct. This kind of woman doesn't just nurture, she rescues. When her child cries, she doesn't just soothe, she feels their pain as her own. When her family is tired, she pushes past her exhaustion to meet them where they are. And when everyone is fed, settled, and safe, she still scans for what's missing. Because peace, to her, doesn't mean rest. It means no one else is in pain. Her nervous system equates stillness with vigilance, always checking, always fixing, always ensuring that no one ever feels what she once felt, unseen. The psychology of overgiving hides in the subtle details, in the way she apologizes for asking for help, in the guilt that rises when she rests, in the quiet resentment that follows when no one notices her effort. She doesn't want praise. She wants to be understood. But understanding requires visibility, and visibility feels dangerous. To be seen is to risk rejection. So she stays hidden in service, offering more, until the act of giving becomes her language, her armor, her identity. When a mother gives too much, her love becomes a currency she can't stop spending. Each act of care is both genuine and survival-driven. She needs her family to be okay, not just because she loves them, but because their well-being proves that her existence matters. If they're okay, she did her job. If they're hurting, she failed. It's a cruel, emotional equation, one that keeps her in constant motion, even as she quietly disappears from her own life. Overgiving is often mistaken for strength. People call her selfless, kind, devoted. And she is all of those things. But selflessness, when rooted in fear, becomes a form of self-abandonment. She gives not because she doesn't have needs, but because she learned that her needs are a burden. Her care for others becomes a way to manage her own anxiety, a ritual that soothes her, even as it drains her. That's why, when someone finally asks her what she wants, she hesitates. Wanting feels foreign. Desiring feels selfish. She only knows how to exist through giving. If you look closely, you'll notice that her kindness often carries tension. Her smile holds fatigue. Her voice softens to hide the exhaustion in her chest. She tells herself she's fine, but her body knows better. It stores the unpaid emotional debt of all the times she gave without being received. Her back tightens from carrying invisible weight. Her heart aches from the silence of unacknowledged devotion. And still, she wakes up and gives again, as if her love might one day earn her the peace she's been postponing. Psychologically, this pattern isn't about generosity. It's about control. Not control in a manipulative sense, but a desperate attempt to manage uncertainty. When she gives, she feels safe. When everyone else is okay, she can breathe. Giving becomes her way to keep the world predictable, to prevent the chaos of disappointment or rejection. Deep down, she fears that if she stops giving, love will stop arriving. So she stays busy, not out of choice, but out of survival. The tragedy is that her giving often teaches others to take, not because they are ungrateful, but because her overfunctioning creates a system where imbalance feels normal. Her children grow accustomed to her filling every gap. Her partner learns to rely on her emotional steadiness. And slowly, she trains her environment to mirror the same pattern she's trying to escape, where she is the giver, and everyone else, unknowingly, becomes the taker. But this cycle doesn't start from malice. It starts from love that was once neglected. The mother who gives too much is the child who once received too little. Her giving is a love letter to the little girl who wished someone had noticed her without her having to earn it. She's still trying to rewrite that story through her children, through her care, through her endless devotion. But the rewrite never finishes, because love built on self-sacrifice always leaves her empty. Sometimes she dreams of being taken care of someone saying, "You can rest now." But the thought brings guilt, not relief. Her body resists it. Her mind races with undone tasks. Rest feels like failure. Stillness feels unsafe. She's forgotten how to receive. And receiving is what would heal her most. Yet, how do you teach yourself to receive when your entire identity is built on giving? That's the quiet question that hums beneath her days, the one she rarely lets herself hear. And so, she keeps giving, until one day, something small breaks. Maybe it's a forgotten thank you. Maybe it's her child's indifference, or her partner's assumption that she'll handle everything again. In that moment, she feels the sharp sting of invisibility. Not because she wasn't appreciated, but because she's been gone from her own life for so long that even she can't find herself anymore. It's often at that breaking point that awareness begins, not as anger, but as grief. Grief for the years spent proving her worth. Grief for the parts of herself she gave away, believing it was love. Grief for the version of her that never got to rest. That grief isn't weakness, it's truth. And truth, for the woman who has spent her life avoiding her own needs, is the first sign of coming home. There's something sacred in that realization. The moment she begins to wonder what love would look like if it didn't cost her so much. What if care didn't mean depletion? What if love could include her too? The thought is small, fragile, but real. Like the first breath after being underwater too long. It doesn't erase the pattern, but it opens a space. And in that space, something shifts. Because beneath the exhaustion, beneath the selflessness, there is a quiet longing to be seen not for what she gives, but for who she is. And when that longing finally whispers, loud enough to be heard, the mother who gives too much stands on the edge of transformation, not yet stepping forward, but finally seeing the doorway she's been standing beside all her life. And that's where the healing begins, not in giving less, but in learning what her giving was trying to protect. Her giving was never random. It was language, fluent, practiced, inherited. Every act of care carried an unspoken message. Please see me as good. To understand the psychology of mothers who give too much, you have to listen beneath the surface, to the sound of a nervous system that equates love with labor. When love was once uncertain, effort became her proof. She doesn't just want to be loved, she wants to be safe in love. And for her, safety has always required earning. When a child learns that love must be maintained through service, adulthood becomes a continuation of that performance. She becomes fluent in the needs of others and illiterate in her own. Her intuition sharpens for everyone else's moods. She notices the smallest changes in tone, the slightest distance in someone's eyes. But when it comes to herself, she's numb. She can feel others' discomfort across a room, yet can't feel her own hunger until she's dizzy. That is the emotional cost of overgiving. Hyper-attunement outward, disconnection inward. Over time, this pattern shapes her relationships like invisible architecture. People around her stop checking in, not because they don't care, but because she seems fine. She insists she's fine. She hides exhaustion under competence, sadness under smiles. Her care is so consistent that it becomes invisible, a background presence, like oxygen. And then she wonders why no one notices her. But they can't notice what she never allows to be seen. This is the paradox of the mother who gives too much. She hides behind her own love. She builds safety through invisibility by making sure everyone else is okay. She avoids the terror of being exposed as too much, needy, not enough. Her giving protects her from shame. It's not generosity alone. It's a shield against the old fear that she's only lovable when she's useful. So every time she makes herself smaller to accommodate others, part of her believes she's securing love. But she's really just repeating the childhood bargain, affection in exchange for absence. If you listen to her language, you'll hear clues. It's no trouble. I don't mind. I just want everyone happy. These phrases sound kind, but they carry exhaustion underneath. They're coded messages from someone who learned that boundaries could cost her connection. She avoids saying no because no once led to distance. She fears disappointing others because disappointment once felt like abandonment. What she calls kindness is often a quiet negotiation with her own anxiety, the hope that if she keeps everyone comfortable, she'll never be left behind again. You can see this most clearly in how she responds to gratitude. When someone thanks her deeply, she often deflects. "Oh, it's nothing," she says, and means it. Because to acknowledge her effort would also mean confronting how much she's given. And that would mean confronting her own depletion. It's easier to minimize than to face the ache of imbalance. Over time, even her body reflects this pattern. Shallow breaths, tight shoulders, clenched jaw, as if holding herself together through perpetual suppression. Her inner dialogue is relentless. Did I do enough? Are they okay? Did I forget something? These questions loop through her day like background music. They're not just thoughts, they're self-surveillance, an emotional habit formed from years of anticipating the needs of unpredictable love. Her nervous system learned to stay one step ahead of disappointment. Even when nothing is wrong, she can't fully relax. Her calm is conditional. It depends on everyone else's comfort. But beneath the perfection, there's usually quiet resentment. Not the loud kind, but the soft, aching kind that whispers, "Why does no one do for me what I do for them?" That question carries both anger and sorrow. because she knows the answer. She trained the people around her not to. By rescuing everyone from discomfort, she accidentally taught them that she doesn't need rescuing. Her overfunctioning erased their opportunity to step up. That's the cruel irony. Her care, meant to create closeness, often creates emotional distance. There's a deep loneliness inside mothers like this, a loneliness that hides behind competence. People praise her reliability, but rarely ask how she's really doing. Her love becomes her disguise, and she knows that if she stopped, if she withdrew her endless giving, people would notice her absence more than her presence. That realization cuts deep, that her worth has become tied to her utility. It's not that others don't love her. It's that they've learned to love her in the way she's trained them to. This pattern often extends beyond family. She's the coworker who takes on extra tasks, the friend who always remembers birthdays, the one who listens deeply but rarely shares her own pain. She's terrified of being a burden, so she compensates by being indispensable. That's how childhood coping becomes adult identity, self-sacrifice as stability. The world rewards her for it. "You're amazing," they say. And part of her glows at the praise, while another part aches because she knows they're admiring the mask, not the person underneath. Every overgiver eventually hits a point of quiet collapse, not dramatic, but subtle. It might look like exhaustion that sleep can't fix, or numbness where joy used to be. She doesn't explode. She fades. The depletion sneaks in slowly, through 1,000 unnoticed surrenders. Her energy drains, not just from doing too much, but from constantly managing other people's emotions. Emotional labor, disguised as love, is one of the heaviest forms of fatigue, because it never ends. Sometimes she'll feel flashes of anger, sharp, surprising, frightening. She'll scold herself for it. Good mothers don't get angry. But anger, for her, is often a sign of truth trying to surface. It's the buried part of her that remembers she has needs, too. Her anger isn't a failure of love. It's a symptom of imbalance. It's the body saying, "Enough." But she's been taught to silence that voice, to turn anger inward as guilt. So instead of setting boundaries, she doubles down on giving. And the cycle continues. What she rarely sees is how her children are learning from her example. They watch her put herself last, and they internalize that pattern as normal. Some will grow into givers like her. Others will grow into takers, mistaking love for service. Her overgiving shapes the emotional blueprint of the next generation. This is why awareness matters, not to assign blame, but to interrupt inheritance. There's a moment, often late at night, when the house is quiet and she finally feels the weight of her own silence. It's there, in the stillness, that truth begins to whisper. She may not yet know what to do with it, but something in her recognizes the imbalance. A tiny part of her wonders, what if I stopped earning love and just let myself be loved? The question scares her, but also calls her. That's how healing begins. Not with grand gestures, but with small pauses. A second of awareness, a deep breath before the next act of service. The slow, sacred practice of asking, "What do I need right now?" Even if she can't answer it yet, asking begins to rewrite the script. The woman who spent her life giving might one day discover that her worth was never in her usefulness. It was in her being. And as that realization takes shape, something inside her stirs, not yet ready to speak, but no longer willing to stay silent. Because beneath the habit of overgiving lies an older truth, waiting patiently to be remembered, the truth of what love was meant to feel like before it became a transaction. Maybe one day, she wakes before everyone else. The house is still, and for the first time in years, she doesn't rush to fill the silence. She just stands there, barefoot, unneeded, and feels something she can't quite name. It isn't peace yet. It's the faint pulse of self beneath the noise, the part that has waited patiently for her to remember. She realizes she doesn't actually know what rest feels like. Every pause in her life has been a prelude to the next demand. Stillness has always been suspicion, a waiting room for failure. But this morning feels different. She senses the outline of her own absence, the years she traded for belonging. And instead of guilt, she feels tenderness, like looking at an old photograph and seeing the child she once was, the one who tried so hard to be good. What would happen if she began to care for that child now? Not with achievements, not with perfection, but with presence. What if love didn't have to be earned through exhaustion? What if care could include her, too? These questions drift through her like soft wind through an open window. They don't demand answers. They just invite honesty. Perhaps love, at its truest, was never meant to be symmetrical, not perfectly balanced, but alive, giving and receiving as breath and exhale. Maybe overgiving isn't something to fix, but something to understand, a language that can be translated back into truth, the truth that she has always been enough, even when she wasn't needed. She looks around the quiet room, the dishes, the blankets, the evidence of all she's carried, and realizes that nothing external can name her worth, not her family's gratitude, not her children's success, not her ability to hold everyone together. Worth, she begins to sense, is not something you build. It's something you stop abandoning. And though she doesn't say it out loud, a new kind of promise forms, not to stop giving, but to start including herself in the circle of her own care, to let love be something she inhabits, not performs, to belong, even when she's still. Outside, morning light begins to stretch across the walls, gentle, unhurried, unapologetic. She breathes it in, feeling both the ache and the possibility of this new awareness. There is no grand resolution here, just a woman learning what it means to exist without disappearing. And maybe that's what healing really is, the slow remembering that love was never meant to cost you yourself.